It's 9:30, we may as well get started. Tēnā koutou katoa. I'll open the meeting with a karakia. Po huhiri, po rārama, po o te whakaro, po o te tangata, po o te araha. Te po I here nei I a tātou, Māori ore ki a tātou, homie, huie, tākie. Right, welcome everyone. So today we are meeting through till 1 p.m. Now, just before I go through the agenda items, I think the focus for today's meeting has to be the recommendation of the annual report through to Council. The auditors aren't quite ready on that, so I'll propose that we move that to the end of the agenda just to give them a little more time on that. We've also got PwC's internal audit report, and I want to leave plenty of time for the PX items as well. So our first item on the agenda are the apologies. So I have an apology from Councillor Wilson for full absence, as well as from Councillor Ryan for partial absence, and Councillor O'Leary for partial absence. Deputy Mayor. Sorry, I've got partial attendance until 11:30. Yeah.
And 11:45, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, we will still have quorum then. Just, yeah. Okay. So look, Sorry, where am I? I'll resolve, the resolution is to accept the apologies for absence and partial absence. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Maxine, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Kesh. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, now with regards to confirmation of agenda as previously mentioned, I propose to move item 10, which is the final approval of the 21-22 annual report. I propose to move that until after item 15, the final item in public. You'll second that? Thank you. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, so any declarations of interest? No. And no members of the public wanting to present. So, and also now we would normally approve the minutes. Can you just remind me of the process given we're in a new triennium?
Yes, as it is a new triennium and there's been no committee meetings previously within this term, there's no minutes to confirm. They were confirmed via the council at the last.
Right, so they have been confirmed. Thank you. Right, so that then brings us to the Chief Executive report. Over to you, Lance.
Kia ora everyone. Look, I'll take the report as read. The three main headings in there are probably not dissimilar to the last meeting of the of this committee in the last term of the former term of council. Just a couple of things I wanted to highlight was just around the staff vacancies, and all of these sort of run into each other around health and safety and inflation and that sort of thing. So the health and safety side of it, what runs into that is obviously we've been carrying a number of vacancies. We've got a pretty tight labour market, and we've been looking at how do we get bums on seats going forward and that sort of thing. The thing around health and safety is really around making sure that tiredness and fatigue don't become a bigger issue around health and safety, especially in Ivalisa's area and in Helen Parky's area, where we have a lot of frontline staff who are probably working in those critical risk areas, and also in Sean Murray's area working at heights and things like that. So that's really important. So there's been quite an emphasis on that, and working through the Health and Safety Governance Committee and our Health and Safety Committees of each group, and making sure that our what we call toolbox meetings are very pragmatic, and there's good discussions. And I have to say Marie's team and the health and safety team have been doing a lot of work, and they're working on bow ties, and that'll come up further on in the agenda. the bow tie methodology around critical risks. But we're just saying to our leaders that carrying on those conversations about the day-to-day things which cause risk, e.g. driving vehicles, using power machinery, et cetera, those sorts of things. When we come back in the new year, we often have a day for the outside staff where they all get together at Restall's Park, and there's basically a health and safety day. The other thing is there's specific areas of council that within this building, like Blair's team, they're under pressure with plan changes and things like that, and when we're short of staff, then that puts even more pressure on them. So we have pockets of this, so it's not absolutely widespread, and I'd say we've had our engagement survey come back in, that's alluded to in another report. There's good results around health and safety, and there's also good results around people working with their managers going forward, which is really pleasing, despite the fact that there are other pressures on staff, and what's been coming through is inflationary pressures, the household incomes and things like that. So people are worried about things, so there's more outside influences coming into the workplace as well. Notwithstanding that, staff, the engagement surveys showing that staff are very motivated, they're very aligned to where council's going, and we have very high scores around people having confidence in their managers supporting them. I think it's around 88%, which is very, very high. So I think that's a very pleasing thing. Around the staff vacancies and the workforce, I've been doing a lot of work with the regional CEOs. And Dan's team, we're having a korero next Monday just to look at what we do in the new year with the predictions around these challenges probably aren't going to go away for 12 to 18 months minimum, and some of that's around settings with visas and things like that. So we're going to be looking at what are the more innovative things that we can try to actually attract people to come to Kirikiriroa, to come and have a career in local government. Talking with the regional CEs, they're quite keen on looking at that for the whole Waikato region, and I think we have a really good value proposition, not only about work but also the quality of life that we have in Kirikiriroa and other towns in the Waikato as well. So we're going to be doing a little bit of work around that, and how do we actually do that. And you may or may not be aware that Wellington City Council have actually been quite active in going into the Auckland environment and actually trying to recruit staff there, and their new mayor's also been involved in that too, and promoting Wellington a great place to live and all that sort of thing. So we'll be looking at some different ways of actually how do we attract people into our workforce. I think they will see us in good stead, and I think if we really sell the attributes of our workplace, and Hamilton City Council is a great place to work, and our culture, then I think that we will get those bums on seats, and actually that will have a flow-on effect into the health and safety side of things as well, making sure that we don't have staff who are tired because they're working hard because we might be short of resources here and there. Just on the inflationary side of things, there is some good news, even though most of it's bad news, and we're all seeing predictions of things like that. Chris Allen's been giving me assurance that a lot of our capital program, we'll talk about this in the annual plan more, our capital program, a lot of it is already contracted, and we have contractors that are actually committed to those projects. So he's quite confident with some of those predictions around CapEx inflation that we put to the annual plan workshop the other day. So, but we'll have further discussion about that as we move through the annual plan process. So I think in that space, yes, we've got some challenges, but also I think we have got some reassurance that the great work that's been happening and around procurement and contracting is actually paying dividends as well, to make sure that we can deliver on our contract with the community. So I'll leave it there, Madam Chair, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Oh, and Merry Christmas to everyone too.
Right, I'll open it up for questions. I've got one here from Bruce.
Thank you, Karen, that's great. Hey, thank you, Lance, appreciate that. Yeah, these are big challenges, aren't they, in their own way? I was wondering, we've started this from the position of talent attraction and the current stress if I can put it that way, of trying to cover and deal with issues. I think it's been a constant theme in the sector. I just want to say Hamilton to Kiriroa. Is it going to have an impact at that sort of operational BAU level? You can only stretch staff for so long. How quickly do you think you can get to the market and get people in here before you have to start saying, we just can't do some of the day-to-day stuff?
Look, I think we have been reprioritising, and I think Eva Lisa's been very honest, and Helen's teams have been very honest with elected members through our executive updates and also reports to committees about just reprioritising, and we get some seasonal pressures too. Probably the area where we are stretched is when we have an emergency, such as the Normandy Ave pipe issue that we had, 2 weeks ago now, Eva Lisa. So that puts additional pressure on the teams. So that's probably the area where I know Eva Lisa's team are doing a lot of work with contractors and outside suppliers and other councils, to be honest, about how we actually react to those. The answer to your question is, I would say outside staff probably not as challenging as some of the more specialist positions, and I'm not saying they're not specialists, some of them are, but we do have good relationships with contracting firms. The other thing is maybe the contraction in the residential housing industry over the next year, which is predicted, may have some flow-on effect to actually attract more people who are hands-on tools type people. So it's probably more the specialist areas like in Blair's area around planning, with all the plan changes and that sort of thing, project managers, engineers, those sorts of people is the challenge. Look, I don't think the challenge is going to go away. I think it will be nuanced. The outside staff, I'm reasonably confident around that. I think it's probably more as Entity B gets going, I think there's some challenges there, not only the staff that are transferring, but they will be sniffing out opportunities to recruit staff from local councils as well. And, we all have fantastic staff, so they will be looking at those opportunities too. So I'm reasonably comfortable around outside staff. I think it's probably some other areas which are probably going to provide those challenges. But we're going to try and look how do we, be innovative around actually attracting people to the Waikato.
Councillor Maxine.
I agree that we do have a very good value proposition here in Hamilton and a great place to live. Can't imagine why anybody wouldn't want to. But in terms of financial benefits of having 196 staff less, can be quite considerable, and in the past has been used as a way for offsetting other costs and contributing to CE savings. We have talked about this in the past and really want to be able to have a clear understanding that that kind of a culture has been left behind us, and the value of those staff because of the, the consequential costs of having to fill those empty spaces with potential contractors or not being able to commit to projects, etc. So your comment on that would be helpful.
Yeah, so I'd have to say the culture of holding vacancies to make CE savings is long gone. I think we're all aware that we need to get people into those roles. Basically what we budget for around the vacancy factor is what sort of vacancy factor would you normally have in a normal time? So if we can cut staff turnover and if we can increase staff retention, then we don't have all that slop in the salary budget, which then we have to pay professional services to get consultants in, like you say. So, look, my view is that culture's gone. I think our managers and Dan's team have been working very hard together to get people into the organisation, and we've been quite successful on some fronts. So, if I was an elected member, take confidence that we're not driving that behaviour just to, meet CE savings and that sort of thing. I'll be really honest, I think we should have a discussion about that whole CE savings scenario and the 10-year plan. And look, I'm more than happy to look at efficiencies and effectiveness and that sort of thing, which does contribute to, some budgetary savings and that sort of thing. But it's probably more around cost optimisation. How do we get better value for money, rather than just, crude savings? That's part of it. So I think that's something we need to have a discussion about in the 10-year plan. So we don't have the threat of it, like you say, is it driving perverse behaviours or anything like that. So, but if I was an elected member, I'd say you've got confidence that my team aren't using vacancies to find the CE savings and that sort of thing. There's been some other success stories around that. And yes, some of it's been a bit of luck too on contracts coming in a bit cheaper than we thought and those sorts of things. And then staff actually doing some really good work around doing things better, cheaper, faster, and all those sorts of things. So I think we'll be in good stead going forward.
In our partnership with CoLab, is that an opportunity for us to be able to also lean on them for the provision of staff and ability to provide and fill some of those gaps?
Yes. So, and I'm on the CoLab board. There's a project that's being formed as we speak, which looks at not only about attraction to the Waikato, what I talked about before, and councils working together on that. But there's also one around, especially with Three Waters looming, is having like a pool of people who might become surplus to what's happening and don't want to go and work for Entity B. Then how do we actually direct those people into other roles and sharing? And an example was, another council talking about they need a policy advisor or a planner, but they only need the person 50% of the time because of their work program. And could they actually work on secondment for Hamilton City Council, where Blair's team are under the pump and don't have those skills? So there's a project there. It's being formed at the moment. Kelvin French is driving that with his team, with the OD managers and HR managers and CEs across the region. So I think shared services going forward through CoLab, there's a real opportunity over the next couple of years to do even more.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Lance, just in regards to staff vacancies, are we using international recruitment agencies at the moment?
Yes, we use all sorts of forms, and Dan might be able to elaborate when he comes to his report later on. Look, one of the issues coming through, and I've talked to a lot of CEs, both within public service and the commercial area, is some of the visa settings, and you've probably been reading in the media too that, yes, there's work permits being granted, but it's actually for their partner to be able to work, and that's becoming an issue.
Yeah.
And we've heard that through various sources. But we have got, and I've mentioned it before, we have got a few people who don't actually live in New Zealand who are working for us. We've got one young lady who lives in Melbourne, and she's worked for us for 3 years. So yes, we are looking at those different ways of operating. I think Murray's actually looking at engaging some people from the Asia Pacific region to actually do some business analytical work as well. So we're exploring more of that, and we've had some of the local businesses talk to us about their experiences in that, and then how can we actually look at the best practice and replicate that.
And so just next question then, because I'm aware about the visa issues with partners and having partners not being able to work. And I'm assuming that this vacancy, the workforce pressures are a national issue. So in terms of local government, is there advocacy to the, immigration department about this issue, or is there anything being done about it?
Like my view, it probably needs to be advocacy at a political level. And I know, Mayor Paula, has a lot of meetings with ministers and at Metro Sector and various fora that we go to. There has been discussions around this, and LG&Z and Taituara have made representations to government on this, and obviously, Don at the Chamber and other people as well have been making their feelings known. But and we have to do that in a constructive way, and rather than sensationalising things. So the answer is yes. And but I think if we carry on the advocacy and that sort of thing, then I think that's important to do that and work constructively. Look, we do have a good relationship with Immigration New Zealand. Dan's team work closely with them. We have had some staff come in from overseas for I think it's the zoo. Dan, recent examples, some people from California and that sort of thing. So, they have helped us immensely on that front.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think that's all the questions. Thanks, Lance. So the recommendation is that the committee receives the report. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Bruce. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, so we go to item 6. I welcome Mish. Kia ora. Over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll take the report as read, and if there are any questions about the draft work programme.
Pass on. I don't think there need to be too much, but there is one that I would like to make, and it's probably because I want to make it slightly publicly. I would like the auditors to bring their planned letter of engagement to our March meeting. The challenge that we're obviously facing in terms of this year is well signalled, but we are being told that next year is a normal year. I think a normal year is to have our engagement letter and audit plan in March, not in June. It's too late. So I'd like to recommend that we bring that one forward with that expectation that our auditors can deliver on that, please.
I would agree that we should set those expectations.
Absolutely, we'll make the changes to the draft schedule, and I'll connect with Tracy over that.
Okay, no other questions? So yeah, I've reviewed that. I'm happy that that's all within our terms of reference, and we can add to it throughout the year as necessary. Right, so the recommendation is that the committee receives the report, adopts the work programme for the committee, and notes a wider schedule of reports for the Strategic Risk and Audit Committee, Council and other committees in 2023 will be updated and provided to the committee in 2023. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Mayor Paula. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, we'll move to item number 7, the Safety and Wellness Report. I welcome Dan. Kia ora.
Marina.
Over to you.
Look, I'll take the report as read, but by way of just a small scene setting, what we've been looking to do is embed important foundations over the last period around ORA, around our safety management system, contractor management and critical risk management as well. And what we're now looking to do is reshift our focus towards the new year and the year ahead to ensure that we validate our progress and focus on continuous improvement. And you would see through the report just outlining some of those activities and future focus initiatives and programs that we'll be looking to embed and leverage. So I'll pause there, and we are happy to take any questions.
I have a question from seat 9. Can you help me there? Oh, okay, right. Thank you. A question from Bruce.
Sorry, I thought you had one. I was happy to wait after you.
No,
Kira.
you go.
Okay.
Yep.
But look, just Dan, just a wee bit of comment on the engagement score. No large drama. I see it's dropped a wee bit, and probably in the circumstances, engagement across the country has probably dropped a tad. I was interested in the benchmark score, though, which suggests that we're quite a wee bit lower. I wonder if you've had a chance to think through perhaps points, rationale, why? What is anything you could contribute in that area? Thanks.
Yeah, well, the benchmark score is the top 25% of organisations that fall within that survey. So that is the top echelon. If you look at I think the local government was 3%. Sorry, ours was 3% lower than where we were last year. Statistically, it's not a significant drop. So whilst we would like it, to have gone up, what we would say it's a static result. We are looking to benchmark ourselves and be an employer of choice. So that top 25% is where we would like to be. And so that's about, taking action, putting in meaningful action planning to address those key drivers. So we're in the process of, unpicking that. We had a really positive meeting with ELT a couple of days ago, and we'll be looking to, push forward with some of those important actions to address engagement.
Dan, can I just add to that? Bruce, there's 5, out of all the questions in the survey, there's 5 engagement questions which give you the score.
Yep.
And one of them is, I see myself still working at Hamilton City Council in 2 years' time. Well, we've got 18% of our staff who may not be working at Hamilton City Council in 2 years' time because of Three Waters reform. Well, they won't be now that the legislation's going through. So that dropped from 66% down to 57%. So, in one of the 5 engagement questions. So I think all local government's been challenged on that, and Dan's team have actually, and I'll share it with the council in the new year. We've been looking at us benchmarking against public service, and because the benchmark here is not just public service, it's also commercial organisations. So we're sort of not alone that there's been it's either static or a slight drop. That's happened right across public service, especially in local government, and especially larger councils that have large waters teams. Some councils have it, contracted out, or don't have it, like Auckland, it's in water care services and that sort of thing. So, so there's some nuances to it. But I'd have to say that Dan's team have done a really good job, and it's actually the tool that we're using, Culture Amp's quite good for cutting the cheese different ways. And here they've given you some more results around the health and safety questions, which are generally quite favourable, even though there's been quite a small drop. The thing I look at is actually the unfavourable score. Like you look on that page there under health and safety, and you look at and that I always look at that far end and the middle section, the sort of the neutrals. I'm an optimist, and I always think that you can get people to become more engaged into the green section. The red section is the one that you should be concerned about. Now, overall engagement, we have 12% in that, and 4 years ago we actually had 18 to 19%. So, and other surveys call that those staff are disengaged. So, I think my aim would be to get that down to 6% overall right across the council in the next wee while. So I think we'll do some more analysis on this and get insights and then bring that forward. Some of the anecdotal stuff goes to what I said before around people are worried about cost of living crisis, especially our lower paid staff, and that's come through quite strongly. And we're not alone. I've talked to other CEs in the Waikato region. They've got the same message coming through similar surveys.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I think Lance might have answered most of my questions, but just in terms from management or managing this, does management have a KPI? Like, is an engagement survey something that we should have a target for? It's kind of sat around that 60, late 60, mid 60s for quite a long period of time now, hasn't it?
Yeah, look, I've been around local government a long time, and I think if you get over 70%, you're doing well. Our target is 75%, I think it is, Dan, is that right? Okay. 75? Okay. So I think going forward, and you get really good insights, and the people actually who do it, Culture Amp, they have an analyst who gives you the information. You come up with sort of 3 key themed areas, and then we actually look at what's our plan around that, because you don't want a 25-point
Yeah.
plan, because you never do any of it, so it's actually concentrating on 3 things. So we've got that, we'll share that with you guys going forward, but also it's in the CE KPIs too, so those
Yeah.
are on the CE review committee, be able to have a good
Yeah.
tease out of that.
And just a follow-up question then. Do we measure in some form productivity? And if we do, is there a correlation between this going up and down in productivity from the organisation? Was that,
Murray
How
would
long
probably
is a
say
piece
not
of
as good as
string?
we could. Look, we do in some, a lot of it's outcome and output focused. Staff productivity is complex when you have 28 business units, so it's around our KPIs to the community, you know, the outcomes that we report to the
Yeah.
Finance and Monitoring Committee. Look, it can be better, so we're doing some work on that. Obviously, we don't make widgets in a factory, so you have to be, you have to be quite nuanced at it. And in a KPI for some of the Helen's area would be around, visitor satisfaction at the zoo or visitor satisfaction at the museum or something like that. So we tend to look at the outcomes, the end result, and I think with good management and leadership, then productivity of staff becomes a real management issue, and that goes to engagement, motivation, good systems and processes, clear direction, all those sorts of things. So it's a really good question. The simple answer to it is that we could be a lot better.
okay.
Can I, through the chair, just add to that, Lance? I've come up with this term of COVID amnesia. We forget about COVID and the impact. We abolished the traffic light system in New Zealand on the 2nd of September. And I know the reason for your question, and I'm in support of the question because we need to work on productivity, but first and foremost, it's about the people leaders engaging with staff, dealing with priorities setting and making sure that they're well as well. So productivity is a real difficult conversation to have with staff when you're working through that.
And just going forward, our leadership program that we've been developing, my view is over the next few years with the amount of uncertainty is that we need to have really good leadership and a good relationship between our staff and the people that lead them. So we've got a program that's kicking off in the new year, which is around enhancing what existing leaders do and actually identifying emerging leaders and wrapping a whole package around them. So, Dan, I think we're out to the market just for some of the outside provision on that. For me, that's a really exciting part of going forward, which I think will go to engagement and also productivity as well.
Yeah, and what I'd also add there, Lance, I think there was a great point, identifying key competencies that are unique to council as well. So look, we've again worked with the executive team to identify those, and we'll use those as foundational blocks for the leadership programs that we stand up in the new year. So really, really excited about the opportunity and what's coming.
Thank you. That was a useful discussion. I think it links back to the risk that you started, you opened with, Lance, and that's the risk around retention and recruitment of staff and the pressures that are on our workforce at the moment. Councillor Tish.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. Page 17, looking at the survey questions that we ask staff, the one about feeling comfortable talking about my mental health with my manager, is that, do we expect people to be talking to their managers about mental health? Or I understand, do we have, an independent counselling option for people who need it? Or
mental health has been identified as one of Council's top 13 critical risks. So we need to support that. That's why that question was actually adopted and put into the survey. We're doing a lot of support across our business units with providing EAP. We utilise Vitae, which is a counselling service. We've got Vitae coming now onto a number of our sites regularly. meeting with people, either on a very casual basis, depending on the site and the people. It may be by appointment. We've also engaged Synergy Health and are running the Good Yarn Mental Health Workshop. And that workshop, if you're not familiar with it, is all about teaching people just how to have a conversation with someone they are concerned about and directing them to support, because none of us are medical professionals. We don't have that expertise, but we all can have a conversation with someone that we're concerned about. It's also about knowing our boundaries. We can support our people in mental health, but there's limitations to what we can also do as an organisations, because people need to help themselves as well.
Yeah.
So it's just giving them those tools and resources to do so.
Cool.
And if I could just add as well, it's trying to adjust the stigma around talking about mental health. So mental health's a good thing. It can be really positive, and because we all have mental health, and so the more we can talk about it, the more we can normalise, and that's actually what we want to do. We want people to be able to, feel comfortable and provide that safe, caring environment, which enables those conversations, and so that's part of it as well.
Yeah, and Good Yarn is very much based on the Te Whara Tapawhā model, which is all about the four walls of a whare and bringing one's best self to work. And that's all we want to do, for people to be able to bring their best selves to work, and which will lead on to engagement and productivity.
Yeah. So are we encouraging people to speak to their managers about mental health issues, or is that the direction?
Yeah, look, certainly if they've got things that they might want to bring forward, then it's about equipping our leaders to be able to respond in the right way. And if they can't, then it's about seeking out that more specialist advice, whether it be through EAP, whether it be through VTE, whether it be through the safety and wellbeing team, or further referral. But what we want them to be able to do is feel comfortable coming forward so that we can get the right support if they need it.
Perfect, thank you. And just one other thing, I was just looking at the minutes from the safety governance meeting, page 24, about Sven, who spoke at the meeting. What has there been further thinking into some of his answers that he, the what keeps you awake at night, or what would you do if you had no financial constraints? I mean, his answers are obviously very honest. So have we done any further thinking into that?
I might hand that one over to Sean. So Sven and the area, I think you spoke about resource.
Yeah.
Yes, look, certainly, but I'm guilty of doing an email while you were speaking, so I didn't quite pick up on your question.
I was talking about page 24, the answers from Sven at the governance meeting. And he the question was, what keeps you awake at night? And the other question was, what would you ask for if you had no financial constraints? So I was just wanting to know if there's anything that's come from that, or any further thinking after hearing what he had to say.
Yeah, look, I think what Sven had to say is consistent with how he's felt for his entire career in terms of the sort of work that they do, and understandably so, because it's no matter how much mitigation or process or whatever you put into place, it is always a big issue. I think the issue that we have that is quite concerning to him at the moment, and me, and the rest of the team, is the sheer volume of work and the labour force that's actually available. So Sven's area, they do a lot of technical stuff. Yes, they work from heights at times. They rely on casual staff as well to handle the volume of work, but that casual staff pool has ceased since COVID. We just don't have them. We also have the issue where he also relies on subcontractors to come in and do work, and at times they let us down. And that's happening a lot at the moment, right across the board, whether it's cleaning staff, whether it's heavy lift staff that we use for a lot of work, that our Kiwi crew that come in to help the tech services guys, and that they can phone up 6 hours before an event and say, sorry, but those 9 people that you were expecting, we can't deliver them. And so that does put strain and stress on our teams to put in extra hours to make up for that shortfall. But I guess one of the things we always have is the balance of staffing permanent staff versus casual staff, and we've actually upweighted a number of permanent staff to make up for the fact that we have less casuals. And that's actually worked reasonably well, but we always have odd spikes where we find ourselves in trouble, and it's not just Sven's area. In terms of equipment, I'm confident that we are providing great equipment and good, safe equipment that's kept up to spec and regularly checked and so forth, like scissor lifts and things like that. So we take a lot of care on that. We certainly have a bit more to invest in equipment that actually makes the physical work a bit easier. So staging is very manual, heavy lift. Be good if we could get some staging with wheels on that can retract and contract, and that's sort of in our horizon to do one day, just to alleviate, but everyone takes it pretty seriously.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Comments reflect what Lance was telling us, that, you know, those resourcing issues flow throughout the organisation. I've just got one question on that same page 24, and that's the Safety Governance Committee minutes, and the discussion around the permits to work, and so they're currently only used in the wastewater treatment plant, and I wondered whether there were plans to roll them out in other appropriate areas.
Thank you, Kieran. Yes, they are being used. Wastewater have a very rigid system. Our team, via the ORA, our incident management system, we're about to embark on phase 2 going into February, March next year, and phase 2 will include a permit to work module. So my team will be going out to the business units and engaging with them to understand and get templates from them with regards to the permits of work that we're going to be using, and we're going to be putting those into ORA so that we have them accessible online and by web-based, so that people can actually, we've got one area where we know we're gaining consistency, so that we're about to embark on that work.
And presumably that'll be supported by training.
Definitely. In fact, a big part of our projects of work for next year, this year we've embedded a lot of frameworks and training, because there's one thing to implement systems in place, but we've actually got to go out and actually train our people, and we're actually in the process of doing that currently with contractor management as an example, so definitely training.
Yeah, okay. The only other thing I wanted to note, the positive health, safety and wellness measures within the engagement survey, well done. And also well done on the progress against the safety reset work. When we look at the work that's been conducted and the progress made this year, you know, it's come a long way. So it's really pleasing to see that. Well done. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Just on that point, just looking for direction, Madam Chair, just around including that table going forward. I think only a couple of elements haven't yet reached that 100%, and whether you'd like us to continue to include that in the report until they are fully complete, we're very open to...
My preference would go until it's all green. I'm not sure what the rest of the committee feels. So I'm seeing nods. Won't it be great when you've got a full green column there?
It will be. Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendation is that the committee recommends that council receives the report. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Bruce. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Right. Item number 8, I'll ask Julie forward. Thank you. Risk management report. Kia ora, Julie.
Thank you, Chair. Do I need to push a button here? Good. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to highlight key points from the risk management report, starting on page 27 of your agenda and taken as read. As you know, the report focuses on our strategic and organisational risks with the accompanying risk register containing the detail relating to these. There are no significant changes since the last report presented in September. We do assess strategic risks 2, 6 and 7 are most susceptible to escalation over the next 2 quarters as central government's reform agenda continues to progress and we head into a recession. Those risks continue to be closely monitored. Over the next quarter, it's possible we'll see extreme weather events, an escalation of COVID-19, attraction and retention of top talent, and changes in New Zealand's economic conditions impacting on our risk landscape. We'll continue to watch global, national and regional trends to assess any potential impact on us. I can confirm most risk owners or their delegated representatives are here in person or on Zoom and are happy to take any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce?
Julie, just really part statement, but also a question. Great report and really helpful. SR9, Strategic Risk 9, which is the climate change one. Really just a question, as I've worked in this area increasingly elsewhere, what is an area that we sometimes forget about is particularly how are we accountable to our communities for climate change? And that's particularly increasingly now through the annual report, and dare I say it, the accounting profession is now starting to pick up speed, including questions around verification of that. I strongly favour that we get into this area, because if we're holding ourselves accountable, that's good. In terms of managing this risk, have we thought about and are we progressing the accountability side of the climate change risk equation?
I'd like to defer your question to Julie Clausen, who is on Zoom, hopefully. She's not in the room. No?
I'm happy to leave it as an outstanding question. I mean, it's something that we're not going to lose. We can't afford to lose, because ultimately there will be stronger requests for
It doesn't sound as though we
that's
have
fine.
the right people here to answer your question
But
today.
if I could then ask another question, it's not a follow-up to that, but it's an additional one, Julie. In terms of the emerging risks, which, you know, so life's stable, that's good, although we already actually had a good risk discussion this morning. I was interested in the tables that you've put here for various international and global risk ones. Were there anything in there that prompted you to think about the nature of our risk profile and environment? Did you see gaps in our risk profile by looking at this table?
No, in fact, quite the opposite. I did feel a level of reassurance that our strategic and organisational risks do reflect what's happening globally. And I did note this morning when I looked back through this that our top risks for 2022 there on the right-hand side has possibly been updated now as well, so I'll be curious to see what the new results are there. Yeah, I'm comfortable that by and large what we've got pretty much reflects.
And looking at global trends and what have you. By the way, I found that table really helpful, thank you. But I've been thinking lately about biodiversity risk. It's a risk that comes up on risk registers from most of the organisations I'm dealing with, and I didn't quite appreciate the impact on councils until I was listening to something the other day where they were talking about the impacts that might have on councils. So one, with respect to our community's expectations, and secondly, with regards to urban design and the impact that has on biodiversity. So I'm just wondering, have you been thinking about that risk with regards to Hamilton's risks?
So I can say that there have been a number of operational level risks that are in that biodiversity category. So I think it probably is timely for us to have a look at those and see if it is something that we need to escalate through to either a strategic or organisational risk. I know that we'll be doing an annual review of our risks with ELT mid next year, so it would be an obvious one to take a look at, I think.
Great. And yesterday, excuse me, you mentioned about some possible work next year advancing the assurance over the risk controls and mitigations. I wonder if you'd like to share that with the committee for those that weren't at the workshop.
Sure. what we'd like to be able to do is now that we've got everything into Shield, our software program for managing risks, we'd like to take a closer look at the controls that sit in there and really get a better understanding, I guess, of whether that they are effective or to what level they are effective, so that we can start providing some assurance around those. I'm not sure what our approach will be yet, but I'll be looking at what others have done to help with that.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing that work. I see that as the natural progression now. We've got a good foundation for risk management. The next step, the next phase is, of course, seeking assurance over those controls. So I commend you on those efforts and those aspirations. So that's great. So just picking up on Bruce's question around the climate change work, I was really interested to read, there's a lot of good work going on with regards to risk management around climate change, and I just wondered whether there is a tie-up between that and what will that be eventually our task force for climate change financial disclosures, financial reporting obligations, and whether we're thinking ahead for that so that the work we do now works well to flow into our financial reporting obligations. Is somebody across that?
My honest answer is I don't know. Thank you. Oh, thanks. There we go. Someone does know.
So that is not working in silos. You are coordinating. Loving that response. Thank you, Tracy. Right. No further questions from the committee on the risk management side of things? Nope. I'll just check my notes. I think that's it. Right. So the recommendation is that the committee receives the report. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Bruce. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Our next report is from PwC. I'll invite Tracy, Matt and Aaron to join us to take us through the internal audit report, item 9 at page 60.
Thanks, Chair. We take the status paper as read. Just a couple of notes from that. We've completed the strategic property report, which we will talk to in a minute. And we've also completed the field work for the vendor analytics piece of work, and now the council staff are investigating the anomalies, the outputs that we have from that piece of work, and there's nothing further to highlight from that at the moment for the council that the committee should be aware of, other than what's on our status report. So I'll just take a pause there before we go on to the strategic property report.
Thank you. Yeah.
See if there's any questions on the
So
status
are there
paper.
any questions from the committee just on the general internal audit report before we move to the strategic property report? I've just got one question, and that's planning for next year's internal audit plan. What is the timing for that planning work?
Well, we have got a 3-year program, so we will update the second year of that plan at the March meeting.
Great. Okay, do you want to just take us through the key points of your strategic property engagement report?
Yeah, we have our property person from our property team online, if they could be let in. Lara Bennett.
Thanks for that. Good morning. Just to go over a quick summary of the work we conducted, we met with the team and assessed some example projects and went through a number of the processes that the team undertakes. Our overall findings is that it's a small but strong, cohesive team. They have good both technical and institutional knowledge. Probably the key thing coming out of it for us was they could probably, the skill set could probably be capitalised on further in wider council activities, but to achieve that, they possibly need either additional resourcing or some tasks that are more administrative moved elsewhere just to free up some time and capacity.
Okay, thank you. That was a really good succinct summary. Does the committee have any questions on that report? While you're thinking about that, I do have one question. I just noted that your report also reviewed progress on the previous report's recommendations, and not all of those have been implemented. So I think there were 3 completed, 1 work in progress, and then 2 not yet implemented or started, and they relate to a second person review of the leasing register and increasing automation. So I just wondered why they hadn't been implemented. Is that something you're able to answer, or is that question better directed to perhaps Tracy? Or Nicholas?
Madam Chair, Nicholas Wells, Strategic Property Unit Manager. There are two answers. The first relates to the sorry, which were the two?
Says.
Oh yeah, okay. So the manual invoicing question has been one that's been vexing us for a number of years, and we would very much like an automated system to be put in place. The answer to putting that in place is when the council-wide authority system is upgraded, there will be the capacity in that new system to seamlessly integrate with the work that we do and provide that automated invoicing capacity. Your other question relates to the implementation of a second person review of leasing data, I think. Yes, and we're working on a solution to that at the moment. So effectively we have a resource elsewhere in the growth group who will be able to assist us with that, and we're just working through the detail of that. We'll capture that through a ProMap process, and that will be up and running in the start of next year. To answer your question, why hasn't it been done previously? The simple answer is resourcing and priority. We just haven't got around to doing it.
Right. So on the face of it, that seems a reasonably simple thing to do. But what am I missing there?
It's just hasn't been done.
Right.
We just overlooked it.
Right, okay, just slipped through the cracks, right. Okay, but it sounds like it's a quick one.
I think so.
Yeah. Yes.
Digitalising, as Murray knows, because he's doing what the organisation is doing at large. So it hasn't been done. Resourcing was part of it. Presumably you're talking 2 parts, some people resource plus the capacity to get the bits and pieces you need to bring it together, right? That's technical talk. So, but in terms of, so what can we expect to see happening this upcoming year? We're going to go away, have a break for Christmas, and then we're all going to, and how soon could we expect this to be in place? Because Kerry makes a really good point. It's going to be the best outcome. Anybody want to answer that? How and when are we getting there?
Sorry, are you referring to the authority update?
Automation.
Yes, I'm not sure. I have to defer to Mr.
Sorry,
Hickey.
Murray, but I know you're doing it for the organisation.
Yeah, we're working on that strategy now.
So, yes, okay, just give me, I don't want to pin you down to like a date, but are we talking 3 months, 4 months, 6 months before we see? When are we talking that it will be in place?
6 months.
6 months? But not like another whole year? Okay. Cool, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Look, just wanted to, obviously we got ourselves hooked into the last recommendations, which is not a bad thing. Look, I just want to check, manual processes, we tend to give them a bit of a bad rap these days, and we can automate, and I get that. But of course, we also recognise manual processes are liable to human frailty. So it's part of our billing. What assurance do we have over completeness of billing and nobody falls through the crack? Now, we maximise our revenue. I'm sure need to maximise our revenues elsewhere.
Yes, that's right. I mean, we are very much focused on making sure that we get every cent owed to us. There are two staff members who deal with this, so they sort of interlock, back each other up. One, I suppose, is providing sort of the management oversight. The other is actually doing the technical side. And look, I have confidence that those people know what they're doing and are performing at a very high level. That's really all I can say on that.
Thank you. And obviously the answer is in part, let's get it automated. Can I ask a question about actually the current report? And I'm interested, given your tenure, how would you characterise what PwC have found out about your unit? I'm interested because I'm interested in trying to get a sense of what these recommendations are really saying.
Yeah, look, I welcome the PwC internal audit because I think, you know, we are a small, very focused team. Oftentimes, it's very easy to focus on the work in hand and lose sight, perhaps, of some of the value-added propositions around the periphery. And that's why I'm delighted that PwC report has come through. They've made some very useful recommendations. How would I characterise those? I think they're generally of a sort of an administrative nature, more often than not. Look, we are dealing with, and there are three of us plus a very competent admin support person. We're dealing with projects that will ultimately, if they come to fruition, liberate $500 million worth of investment in property matters in the CBD. That's where our focus is. And so we have to be very clear about how we prioritise our work and where we place our energies, given that we have a very limited resource to deploy.
Well, can I say, if I jump in there, that's what interests me is the first set of recommendations, which are around, are you clear about, I shouldn't personalise it, is the council clear about its objectives? And if I looked at the greater, the first observation is greater detail and clarity required, that's really what I think that's getting at. And I'm interested that we might not have clear objectives because it's a classic area where we should. Yeah. You sound like you have got clear objectives.
Well, I think we, the council, do have clear objectives. What I would suggest that this recommendation is aiming towards is actually concentrating that piece of work in one area of council as opposed to having it split out amongst various areas of council. So I think what the recommendation is saying is that there is an advantage for the strategic property team to deploy its skills in other areas of council in order to maximise the benefit and expertise that we bring to the projects.
Some of the recommendations of administrative sort of nature, they enable actually quite strategic value across the council if your team's expertise is used correctly. So look forward to seeing those recommendations considered.
Yes, no, we agree.
Yeah. Okay, if there's no further questions on that report, the recommendation is that the committee receives the report. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Maxine. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, so we will skip now to the annual credit rating report. I think, Tracy, are you going to take us through that? So that credit rating report is on page 91. Kia ora, Tracy.
Good morning. So this report I'm bringing you today is our annual credit rating report. So for those that are new to this committee, this is a report that we bring annually. So basically what this is our related to our credit rating. So just the first thing to note is the change of the company. So nothing major, they've just changed what we used to call them Standard & Poor's or S&P. It's just now S&P Global Ratings. So same company, just a change of their name. So what this report is around our credit ratings, and what that means is they assess our ability to repay debt, meet our interest obligations, and to make sure that we don't default on any debt. What they do is they come through and they review all of our annual reports and our annual plans. They also interview quite a few key staff to make some of those decisions. So it is with pleasure today that I can confirm that the S&P Global Rating have affirmed our AA- rating with an outlook of stable.
Well done, thank you. I think that paper is more for information than anything. But we do have one question, Deputy Mayor Angela.
Good news, but I have a question around, I think it was in this report, might have been in the audit report. No, it was in this one, around them noting the massiveness of our capital works program.
Yes.
And I'm reading this as if there is more slippage, it could affect our credit rating. So what I just want to understand the risk there, is that a quantum of dollars, or is it the number of projects in that program that they would look at? Because that is a significant financial risk to the organisation. And you hear regularly in this chamber, and I know it's coming up, we just can't keep adding deferrals to our program of works with everything else in the world going on. So can you give me some insight into that? Because I was concerned with that.
Sure, and it is a really great question, and it is probably one of the biggest topics that we discuss with them when they actually come and interview all of us. So obviously they interview the Mayor and the CE, they interview Chris, David and myself. So what they are is they're quite practical about the delivery of our capital program and taking those deferrals into consideration. So while we might have in the annual plan, what we know, we also are very realistic about the deferrals, and they do, when they're modelling that in, they'll model in a certain percentage that they know we won't need. Because remember, it's not necessarily about the project itself not being delivered, and this is the discussion around what we call deferrals and what we're calling cash. This is pure cash. This is all about when are we going to pay the cash for those projects. So as we know, as we talk about a lot, we always do end up doing those particular projects. It's just the timing of when we spend that cash. So cash equals the borrowings, equals the interest and all of those sorts of things. So that's what they're really interested in.
Okay, so what would be the trigger then for them to be concerned, given that it's cash that they're focused on?
Probably just the same as what we are ourselves when we are going through that process. It would be that debt to revenue that limit. So again, we've gone right up to the top with some of our future years.
Yeah.
So that'd be exactly the same.
So shouldn't that form part of our decision making when we're in this chamber?
It does, and that's the reason why we use in our financial strategy, why we use that debt to revenue graphs to show you exactly as soon as we breach that, there's a whole lot of things that are going to happen as soon as we go over that. This is one of them.
Okay, all right. I guess I'm asking that come future talks, because I know there's going to be some difficult ones. If staff can verbalise that.
Absolutely.
Through the chair, can I just add, everything Tracy's correct, but your question is also a great question. Audit New Zealand probably are going to be more concerned at our inability to deliver to our community in terms of promises, and so that's why, whilst this is about our credit worthiness and our ability to repay our debts, the topic you're talking about is our ability or our capacity to actually deliver on what we promise the community, which is significantly linked. But when we do get into annual plan, long-term plan discussions, we shouldn't be too focused on our financial strategy, because I think we're going to have oodles of money. It's really about our ability to deliver. So, not new money, not new money.
As part of my question, so, and I was also thinking, because we had that good presentation from the Local Government Finance Authority yesterday, and we saw how we stack up against all those other centres, etc. And I wondered and I know that I did have the conversation when they come around and do the review, they were particularly asking around our ability to deliver on the expectations of climate. That was a not a massive part of the conversation, but it was a big part of the conversation. They asked me about our confidence to deliver on what is required of us in the climate space. So my concern is too that this is great news, but just getting all of the councillors to understand what levers or what decisions would trigger this to go a different way for our credit rating to be affected. Of course, other councils around so what would the main three levers be that would undermine this for us? Secondly, councils around New Zealand, from the conversation that I'm having, are all sort of feeling slightly more relaxed about credit rating and going, what difference does it make now if you don't have the highest credit rating? It's expensive to borrow anyway. There are still lenders, so there's still going to be people to lend to us. We've still got the cash cow ratepayer. No, we've still got the ratepayer at the other end, and we've still got other things that we can do to raise cash. So my question is for this council, first of all, explain to us so that the new people understand why is it important to maintain at all costs this credit rating, or is it not? And the three things that, one of which I think you already touched on through Angela's question, which was the ability to deliver capital works, but what other considerations could derail this over the next 12 to 24 months? Because we've got annual plan and long-term plan.
Okay.
I know, sorry, and it
There's
wasn't
a lot.
a succinct question, Ryan, I apologise.
So I guess to your point around what would derail things, so just as I alluded to, the first thing would be that debt to revenue covenant. So that's obviously set by LGFA, but that's also part of what goes into our credit rating. I'm not entirely sure about anything else that would be a lever, but I'm certainly comfortable, and I can certainly go and ask S&P what that would look like and get back to you on that. As far as levers and what the credit rating will do, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. So what this does is gives us cheaper money, basically. So the ratings that you get, it comes through in our basis points, which comes through in our interest paid. So again, very connected to LGFA in the sense that if we can't borrow from them anymore, not only are you paying quite a lot of interest as far as interest expense, but it's also how long I can borrow for. So when we go out to the banks, as Andrew mentioned yesterday, 3 to 5 years probably that I could probably borrow for. So you imagine those repayments are now shorter, as well as higher interest on top of it. And being able to repay that back puts a lot of pressure from a cash perspective. Whereas through LGFA, obviously, we have a longer term debt and it's cheaper as well. So as far as getting a lower rating, it's probably the two key things: one, reputation, and two, actually what interest we would pay.
Okay, so last question then. So given what's happening in the Three Waters space, where some of our business will go somewhere else, but we also get a sum of money, but we also get stranded overheads. So playing those three things out as to what difference does that make for something like this? How will we be seen post that?
So that's exactly what my team is doing at the moment, is modelling all of those scenarios through. So the biggest challenge we have at the moment is identifying what our Waters debt is, and being able to pull that out separately, because I don't identify that at an activity level. It's all just one bank account. So that's probably our biggest challenge at the moment. But as far as stranded overheads and what it'll look like when we pull the Waters business out and all of those sorts of things, that's exactly what the team are doing, working with Andrew and Stephen at the moment, is to model that through.
And thank you. And my understanding is that better off money, if we accept it tomorrow, first tranche, second tranche, etc., can't be used to pay off the debt. You wouldn't use it to pay off the debts. You'd be transferring the debt to the new entity, right?
Correct.
Thank you. Just asking.
But there's also no worse off funding too, which is another thing coming up. So, yeah.
I just wonder if I could contribute to the debate. I think we need to look at a range of measures in relationship to our position, because if you read, it sounds terrible, I know you've read, and looking at the way Standard & Poor's talk, things like our balanced budget and ability to control costs is really important, because we still need a substantial portion of rate contribution to go towards the capital program. It's not just all about the debt. So we have to look at a number of, or a range of those, which I think is the point that I just like to make. It's just not about debt to revenue. It's a big one. There's no two ways about it. But it's actually, when you get into the attachment and start looking at the way of thinking, it's going to be the balanced budget test, our ability to contribute from our general rates to the capital program, which of course comes back to your cash flow statements and all that sort of drama, which Tracy's quite right in saying. So, that's all good thought for your annual plan. Yeah.
If there aren't any further questions on that report, the recommendation is that the committee receives the report. I'll move it. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Angela. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, you'll just stay there, will you, Tracy? So the Audit New Zealand final audit plan, this one really is for information only. It came to the committee previously in June. The final was received on the 14th of October. It has pretty much superseded, one would hope, by today's audit clearance, she says with fingers crossed. I note that the plan is to have the management letter from this year's audit by February 23. So you'll be liaising with Audit New Zealand on that, no doubt.
That's right.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
I'm assuming there are no questions on that report. Okay, so sorry, what page are we on? Sorry, page 101. The recommendation is that the committee receives the report. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Maxine. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. So the general insurance activity update. Tracy and Julia. Kia ora, Julia.
Morning.
Right. Welcome. You can take the report as read, but just highlight the key points for us, please.
Yes, so just as an introduction, my name's Julia Cofford, I'm the insurance manager, and Matthew Wilson from Aon was meant to be joining us this morning, but has been unable to make it at short notice, so we do have Richard Harrison from Aon in the back if there are any questions in that space. Okay. This is the general insurance activity update. We're now bringing this report to this committee twice a year, pre and post renewal. All of our policies have now renewed. Just a note to say, when this report was written, there was a comment about our liability excess layer placement, which hadn't renewed at that point in time. But Aon have advised yesterday that that cover is now in place. It has renewed with expiring terms and conditions and slightly under the 5% increase that was indicated in the report. So that's good news for us. My only other comment is just that generally all our policies have renewed with a 9% increase, which is within our budgeted amounts. Also, given that that takes into consideration increases in values and the market that we're operating in, it is a pretty good result for us. So yes, I take it the report is read and move to any questions.
Just before I open it up to questions, I wonder if you could just reiterate some comments you made yesterday, just for those that weren't at the workshop, just explaining the group cover versus the individual policies.
So in terms of the some of the covers that we take, our larger covers, material damage and infrastructure placement, they provide cover for our assets against physical losses. We purchase those covers with collective limits in the wider Waikato group that we purchase all our insurances with. So what that means is that we purchase a limit that covers that entire group, and we have a sub-limit that applies to our losses as well. That is as compared to our liability policies, for example, where we take an individual limit as a council and any claims in that 12-month period are assessed against that limit.
And Aon have done some modelling to assess whether that sort of group cover, regional-wide cover is sufficient, and they've concluded that it is.
Correct. So our infrastructure placement, the loss modelling, has been redone over the last 12 to 18 months to suggest that the loss limit is still appropriate. And we're working through doing some additional loss modelling in the new year for the material damage placement.
Yep, great. Okay. Are there any questions? You get off easy today. Thank you very much. The recommendation is that the committee receives the report and notes the renewal of council's general insurance. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Mayor Paula. All of those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Righty-ho. So our next paper is item 14, compliance update. Mish, welcome.
Thank
Page
you, Madam.
132.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll take the report as read. There's no matters of fraud or non-compliance to report this month. And if there are any questions, happy to take them.
Are there any questions? I've just got one on page 139. So thank you for providing the list of policies. I think you noted in your report that the new council will consider what policy should be governance level and which should be management level. The question I just have is around particularly the health, safety and wellness policy. I always like to see at least a high level framework or guideline or policy, depending on which organisation you're in, as to which terminology you use. But I'd like to see a high level document outlining the governor's commitment to health, safety and wellness. Is there any is that being considered?
I'm not sure at the moment. I'll have to check with Dan. He's unfortunately not in the room right now. I can come back to you on that one.
Perhaps if we could take that as an action point, please. Okay, if there weren't any further questions on the compliance report, the recommendation is that the committee receives the report. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Ryan. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, the Organisation Improvement Register. Thank you, Mish. Welcome back, Tracy. So we're now on page 141. Did you want to just take us through the key points?
Yes, thank you. So what we're bringing to you today is our Organisation Improvement Register in the full capacity. So we usually just bring this to you once a year. During the year, the other committee meetings, we just bring through anything that's in the high category. So attachment 1 lists all of our recommendations. So again, as we briefly talked about yesterday, these all come from the likes of Audit New Zealand, PwC, Waka Kotahi, MBIE, and any internal audits that we've had done from our internal staff. The only thing is with this particular report today, we're just merging a few systems, so we weren't able to bring any of the internal audit reports, recommendations, or anything older than 2020. So my team are just working behind the scenes and trying to go and find those reports and manually enter them into our new system. So we will bring those ones back at the next meeting. All of these issues, regardless of where they are, if they're high or low, are monitored quarterly through the business to make sure they have been completed. And a lot of them normally have to wait until we get re-audited. So there's a huge chunk, obviously, through from Audit New Zealand. And as Kieran pointed out earlier, we need to wait for a report that will come through from Audit New Zealand in February next year. And they will come through with whether or not they're closed or not. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Do the committee have any questions on that report? I'll kick the ball off now. So I note that there are 27 delayed recommendations, and 7 of them relate to high risk areas, and they're the ones that I'm most interested in. And so I'm on page 146 here. So this is the recommendation from the is it Ibis Breeze PwC internal report. And so I was not yet implemented this functionality, and that's been delayed and not yet started. So that's with regards to either force or refresh change assumptions to display an alert when you're sort of doing that financial modelling. Can you give us a bit of an update on that in that area?
Yeah, so the Ibis Breeze tool is the tool that we use for our forecasting and our budgeting. We use it for the long-term plan and the annual plan. So this is a new piece of software that we've just put in, and they came in, PwC came and audited it after, and we've just done our first year of it. So this was obviously quite a critical change in the software itself. So we are working with the Ibis team to see if they can put that functionality into their actual software, but obviously the developers need to work on that behind the scenes. So they were part of this audit and are very, very clear around expectations and what that is. So we'll continue working with them. So I will find out when they think that will be developed and completed, and I can certainly bring that back to the next committee.
Okay. And I note all of those other high ones that are delayed, are a work in progress. It's just that one hadn't been started,
Sure.
so it did stand out. And another thing that stands out is page 149. So we've got all of those high recommendations there, and a lot of them out to the side note that they're delayed or not yet started. But are they on track?
So this is the last business continuity that was only just delivered to the last committee. So the timing of that, they probably have been started, but the timing of us getting the final report and Louisa putting it in, then she wouldn't have known that at the time. So I have no doubt that the team behind the scenes have started working on that. But yeah, it was the latest report that you just saw at the last committee.
And through the chair, I can confirm that we have started business assessment has occurred, and there's a lot of work going into this, so it's on track.
Thank you. Bruce?
Tracy, I was contemplating, a bit more of that the Ibis Breeze and its planning. Obviously, you've used it once, and presumably with good effect. I presume it's going to be part of the annual plan and ultimately the LTP. While clearly, and I appreciate the weighting around the recommendations, and indeed a lot of it sits with Ibis, they've been made for good reason. I guess what I'm trying to say is, have you got a deadline for when this is actually, these are fixed?
No.
No.
But I will get you one.
And look, sorry, I just feel like I'm not trying to have a crack at you at all, but I'm just reflecting, we've got some critical, well, I guess it's always critical, we've got some critical planning coming up, and I've probably got my head into that space of the LTP nearly now. Would we have a bull's roar of a chance of having it all completed for the LTP?
I would hope so, and in fact, I would hope it would be ready for this annual plan.
Right, okay.
So that's what we've been working towards.
That's even better.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, lovely. Thank you, Tracy.
Okay, thank you. If there aren't any further questions, the recommendation is that the committee receives the report. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Bruce. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. So, Tracy, are you able to give us an update as to where the auditors are at?
No, I haven't heard from them.
No. So I wonder whether we might be better to actually move that agenda item to after the PX items. We can go back into public.
Should we get 15-minute break from morning tea, and we can ring them and see whether
Okay, yeah. Okay, we'll have a 15-minute break We may then come back to the annual report item and then go to PX. If the auditors aren't ready, we'll go to PX, then come back into public and do that very last. So we'll come back at 11:15. Yeah, no, that's a good idea. started again. Look, we're not quite ready to take the annual report item in the public session. The auditors aren't ready yet. So what I suggest is that we'll go into PX, we'll deal with the PX items, and then we'll come back into public meeting and deal with item 10 on the agenda. So the resolution to take us into PX is on page 156 of the pack. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Maxine. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, so we will clear the room, and will you do your bit? Thank you.